A question I hear all the time: who's smarter, atheists or theists? Well, let's break intelligence down just for the sake of this discussion as two areas of the mind, either the creative intelligence or the analytic intelligence. And let's just pretend that these are two separate areas of the mind completely. Whether they are or aren't, we're going to consider creative and analytic intelligence. Analytic intelligence we'll call the intelligence that allows us to conjugate verbs, structure sentences, do mathematics, work through things critically and logically. Then we'll talk about the creative mind in terms of the ability to express emotion. So one will be logical depth and one will be emotional and intuitive depth. Okay, music, painting, poetry, things like that. Now, once we look at that and we say, okay, let's look at both aspects of that and see, are theists stronger or are atheists stronger, and is it that black and white? Obviously, it's probably not that black and white, but it makes for a fun argument. I would say atheists are going to come out on top, and I would say that there are reasons that they're going to come out on top. In order to be an atheist, if you weren't born into an atheist family, which is actually pretty likely, evidently, in the United States, at some point you're going to have to stand against, and again, I'm making a reference to the United States here, you're going to have to stand against the flow, okay? So if your parents are atheists, or excuse me, if your parents are Christian, or if your parents are Jewish, if your parents are Islamic, Hindu, there's a degree of expectation. Moreover, there's a degree of brainwashing or mentally molding you up into a point, right? And so it can be easier, it's usually going to be easier to just go with the flow. If you can't beat them, join them type of a thing. So to stand against that, there is a degree of intellectual or mental strength that is required. Because you're not only standing against the flow in terms of, hey, this is probably going to make my life a little less simple in terms of my social relationships. Okay, maybe in terms of my professional relationships. But not only that, you're having to mentally overcome the idea that you're condemning yourself for eternity. Okay, so there's a mental strength there. Moreover, you're having to come to these conclusions by reprogramming your mind to look at evidence, to look at data, and to come to conclusions through critical thinking and a logical process. So that's a form of intelligence. So now we've addressed that logical side of the brain. Well, how about the creative side? They say, well, you know, look at all the creative beauty that's come out of religion. Architecture, paintings, sculptures, music, poetry, etc. And those things didn't come out of religion. Those things came out of people. And to say that we know with any degree of certainty that those people were absolutely believers in their religion and not just religious by de facto geographic position and where they are located within the timeline of humanity. In other words, if I was born in medieval Europe, there is a certain degree of probability that I'm going to be obligated spiritually, lest my life be taken from me. So I don't think that gives us a good argument for creativity. Moreover, when we look at religion, we're looking at something that somebody else came up with. Somebody else created the idea of this God. They created the idea of the heaven. They created the idea of your hell. They created the idea of how you get to your heaven or end up in your hell. So you're subscribing to someone else's creativity, moreover. I would say the art that was produced by religion or by religious people was produced in spite of blind following and by illogical thinking, not because of. And I think that that's seen in the modern world as religion has slowly lost its death grip on people, and they've been able to create outside of the parameters that were set up by ecclesiastic proportions, meaning the church had to be bigger than the castle or the king had to be larger than the peasant and things like that. Once we got out of those parameters and we had freedom to freely create, the slope has drastically shot up. So I think in the end, I think you see that the greatest benefit to intelligence is freedom of thought, freedom of expression, the ability to challenge ideas. And that's not going to come from theism, but rather atheism.